We're in this series called IKR. You know, when you're on your telephone and you're trying to respond back to somebody and they say something you agree with, you concur with, something that resonates with you, you often reply back, IKR, I know right. And I want to kind of borrow that IKR and talk about, do we know right when it comes to ethical issues in our culture and our society? Do we know what's right? So I've been trying to tackle and address some issues that at face value may or may not be clear. I've been trying to address some issues in which we typically default to the political, societal, or cultural perspective and not per se a biblical perspective. Amen? I want to talk today. I talked last week. I think I got myself in trouble last week talking about talking about work, and all the sisters said amen. The brothers got upset. All righty, and so don't no sister want a brother who can work and don't work. Amen. And so if you get mad at me for that, just be mad. All righty, and but the Bible teaches that if you don't work, you should not eat. And so I wasn't trying to hurt nobody's feelings. It wasn't personal. I wasn't aiming at nobody. I was just preaching the word. Amen. And so if you're an able, capable person and you need food, you ought to work. Smile at me. Amen. And all the sisters said, and the brother said, give me a break. All right. Today I want to talk about another issue and another topic, and it's this area of spiritual transformation. And you know what's interesting, we have more preachers, more teachers, more evangelists, more bishops, more archbishops, more presbyteros, Greek for elders. We've got more churches, more denominations, more media, more church YouTube accounts, more books in publication and circulation than we've ever had. But if you measure the impact of that by spiritual transformation, there's a dead monkey on the line somewhere. But all these books, all these publications, all these YouTubes, all these programs, all this money we have raised, where is the return on spiritual investment? Where's the spiritual transformation? So I want to talk today about I know right about spiritual transformation. So Pastor, what's the problem? Okay, it's two parts. Number one, culture and Christ have a different approach when it comes to spiritual growth and development, or growth and development for that matter. Number two, many Christians, buckle your spiritual seatbelts, many Christians don't have a biblical philosophy or model for spiritual transformation. Don't get quiet. Smile at me. I'm your friend. I'm James. When it comes to this area of spiritual transformation, government's position about transformation is in contrast to God's platform or philosophy of transformation. A greater challenge is that many believers, if you were pressed, you would not be able to communicate to your neighbor, to your friend, to your children, to your mate, to your church member, a biblical model, a biblical approach to spiritual transformation. Are we tracking together? And so what you see is you see believers in a tizzy, unclear about how to ascertain spiritual transformation. So as you're putting $100 on the altar when the guy's preaching, it's okay if y'all do that. Smile at me, all right? Smile at you. I take checks, cash app, you know. I take your credit card. Just put the number, but put the PIN number on the back, all right? Smile at me. But that won't lead to your spiritual transformation. Is it attending church that ensures your spiritual transformation? Is it serving at church that ensures your spiritual transformation? Is it a certain style of worship that ensures your spiritual transformation? Is it receiving the word from the right person in the right way, in the right octave, and in the right tone, with the right illustrations, with the right background, with the right seminary education? Does that ensure your spiritual transformation? So what I know for a fact is that very often we don't have a model for spiritual transformation. And so when people get into a bind in Christianity, we don't have a spiritual word to say to them. We don't have a spiritual philosophy on transformation. Turn to 2 Corinthians chapter 3. It's a book we don't often read. It's in the sticky pages. The pages are sticking together because we don't read there often. But in 2 Corinthians, Paul writes this letter to the church at Corinth. It's another letter he wrote to them. This letter is interesting because they raise questions about the qualifications of Paul, the Apostle Paul. They raise questions about the authenticity of his ministry. And so when you go through 2 Corinthians, it becomes a very personal book. And Paul makes reference to himself quite a bit. And Paul defends his ministry. He defends his apostleship. He talks about the circumstances of ministry. But tucked away in chapter 3, he talks about the ministry of the new covenant. And you all know, as believers in Jesus Christ, we're under the new covenant, not the old covenant, right? So you got this group called the Black Hebrew Israelites, who are bamboozling people because they're still living based upon an old covenant. And they're trying to get New Testament people to live based upon an Old Testament standard called the Old Covenant. And so they just read the Bible. You'll see that, boy, God's got a new. Why am I going to go get the old operating system when God's given me a new operating system? And so chapter 3 talks about this idea of ministry. For those of you all who do ministry and think that when you do ministry in the church, it ought to be a cakewalk. It ought to just be easy. It ought to just be, you know what, it just comes to me now. Read 2 Corinthians chapter 3 and chapter 4, and you will read about the hardship of doing New Testament biblical ministry. But tucked away there, when he's giving this contrast between the old covenant and the new covenant, he comes to verse 16. But when one turns to the Lord, the veil is removed. It's about the veil of blindness. Now the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. How many of y'all want freedom? He's talking about spiritual freedom. And when we all with unveiled face, beholding the glory of the Lord, are being transformed into the same image from one degree of glory to another. For this comes from the Lord, who is the Spirit. So when you read here, you see several terms. You see him making reference to a veil, which is the old covenant. You see him making reference to freedom, which we all desire to have freedom in Christ. You see him making reference to the Spirit, and the Spirit here is not a denomination. The Spirit here isn't focused on speaking in tongues. The Spirit here is talking about spiritual emancipation. Let's not argue over the work of the Spirit. Let's cooperate with the work of the Spirit as the Holy Spirit wants to work in our lives to transform our character. Are we tracking together? And producer, y'all getting kind of quiet in here today. Then he makes reference, he says, watch this now, and being transformed, the word transformed here is in the passive voice in the Greek. That's what passive voice means. It's not what you do yourself, it's what's being done to you. Middle voice says, I'm acting upon myself. Active voice saying the subject is acting upon me. I'm sorry, but it's about acting, but passive voice saying you're being acted upon. He says here, and are being transformed, that we as believers are being transformed by God, by God's Spirit, in the same image, in the same image of Christ. Romans 8 says to be conformed to the image of Christ. God wants us to be just like Christ in our character. That's his goal. And so when it comes to spiritual transformation, we've got so many conceptions of what spiritual transformation ought to be like. But my concern is that we don't have a good handle on spiritual transformation. And so we have no idea what to do and how to do and when to do it when it comes to spiritual growth. So, well, Pastor, what's the big problem with the government program versus God's program? Number one, the government program is external and God's program is primarily internal. Number two, government's program focuses on the temporal, the here and now. God's program focuses on the temporal and the eternal. The government program is community-centered, and that sounds good. You know what? Well, it's community-centered. It's focused on our community, but God's program is covenant-centered. And when you respond to the covenant properly, according to Jeremiah 31 through 33, then what happens is you make an impact on those around you. The government program focuses on the laws of the land. God's program focuses on the law of Christ. Government's program is primarily social, cultural, and political. God's program is primarily spiritual. The government program bases its doctrines on subjective truth. God's program is based upon eternal and objective truth. The government program is primarily concerned about your conduct. God's program is concerned primarily about your character, which will ultimately transform your conduct. The government program is primarily focused on obeying the law. God's program is focused on obeying God. The government program is relative to the individual. God's program is revelatory. Government program is based upon rules. God's program is based upon relationships with some rules. Government program is talking about being justified by works. God's program is talking about being justified by grace. Government program is selfish. What's in it for me? Whereas God's program is selfless. What's in it for the kingdom? Let me ask you a question today. If we went to do lunch like I'm going to do with my college roommate and his wife and his daughter after service, I think we're going to lunch, right? And so I'm paying. And so, boy, if you were going to lunch with them and talk to them about, you know what, give me a plan, a model, a philosophy of spiritual transformation. Could you get a napkin out, write on the napkin what that looks like? I want to give you guys a model of what that looks like on today. See, the society, the challenge is, boy, society view on transformation is inaccurate or absent. Very often individual Christians' view of transformation is often inaccurate or absent. God's fundamental view when it comes to spiritual transformation is internal and not external. It's transformation from the inside out, not from the outside in. It's focused primarily on one's character, not primarily on one's conduct. See, well, you can change conduct for a little while, but then when you get what you want and you get tired, then you change your conduct. But when you transform character, even when you're tired, you do the right thing because your character is right. 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 18. There are three factors in spiritual growth that we often talk about, and then I'm going to share with you 7 things you ought to choose when it comes to spiritual transformation. Number one is this thing called rules. There's a saying that says, rule without relationship leads to rebellion. I want to suggest relationship without rules leads to chaos. Go to the book of Judges. It said everybody did what was right in their own eyes. And what happened when everybody did what was right in their own eyes? See, guys, there's no problem with rules. It's how you use the rules. It's how you relate to rules. The second term is relationship. Spiritual growth is about a relationship with Christ, not just the rules of Christ. But here's the challenge. We're not masters of relationship. Look at our divorce rate in our country. Look at the fracture between parents and kids. Look how we can't get along. They pay people thousands of dollars a year just to come in and help adults get along at work, and they call it professional development. Because people don't know how to manage relationships. Number 3 is this idea of religion. There's this myth, but there's a popular saying that says Christianity is not a religion, it's a relationship. That's wrong. Huh? James chapter 1, verses 26 and 27. See, boy, sometimes we try to make a point that, boy, we end up contradicting what the Bible says. James chapter 1, starting verse 26, says this: if anyone thinks he is religious and does not bridle his tongue but deceives his heart, this person's religion is worthless. Religion that is pure and undefiled before God, the Father, is this: to visit the orphans and widows in their affliction, and to keep oneself unstained from the world. So watch this now. Christianity is a religion. It's not just a religion, it's also a relationship. So to suggest that Christianity is not a religion is false. The Greek term that's used here makes reference to one's devotion and one's dedication to Christ. So here's my thesis. The key to spiritual transformation is dedication to Jesus Christ. The key to spiritual transformation is total dedication to Jesus Christ. It's my roommate Cordell right here, boy. We used to have to go to preseason, but we were mid-level D1 I'm not bragging, I'm just testifying. But we were mid-level D1 basketball players, made it to the top 25 in the country, all that kind of stuff. And boy, my daddy thought that I went down there, but they bought me a Cadillac and kept money in my account. I'm like, Daddy, we don't go to one of them schools. All right, I'm broke. All righty. Now, Cordell wasn't broke because his daddy owned some business, but I was broke. All right, watch it now. So people didn't recognize how many classes we had to miss, how early we had to get up, what preseason training looked like, and all the hours we spent running, and the two-a-days, getting up early, go lift weights, go run, go home, and then come back to the same thing over again. And if the coach got mad, you stayed there 3.5 hours. People didn't have to watch the grind you go through to maintain a college scholarship. And they have the nerve to say, oh, boy, you got a free scholarship. Okay, you think it's free, you go do it. Ain't nothing. I got a scar from repairing a hernia from running and lifting weights. It wasn't free, baby. It ain't free. You paid for it. So watch this now. But if you want basketball transformation, you've got to have basketball dedication. And when it comes to spiritual transformation, do we have the dedication to experience spiritual transformation? Y'all good? Y'all got quiet. Y'all good? Y'all good? So watch this now. How do we experience this, and what do we do, and how do we do it, and when do we do it, and where do we do it? So he comes here, and boy, he uses 4 terms. He uses the term transformation, and boy, it's this word transformation here in verse 18. It makes reference to being changed inwardly and to have a fundamental change in character. How many of you all believe that God can fundamentally change someone's character? See, guys, we don't need more programs. We don't need more money. We don't need more education. We need an alteration of character in our culture, our world, and our society. So watch this now. You want better results, you need better people of character. Number 2 is freedom. It means not to be bound. But then he makes reference here, well, what is the means of that transformation? He says in verse 17, now the Lord is the Spirit. And where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. Verse 18, and we all with unveiled face, watch this now, beholding the glory of the Lord. Guys, what is the activity of the Holy Spirit in your life? And then he goes on, you know what? Watch this now. Spiritual growth ought to be an ongoing activity. He says, I went to the wrong chapter. Verse 18, and we all with unveiled face, beholding the glory of the Lord, are being transformed into the same image from one degree of glory to another. In other words, guys, you never graduate from the school of spiritual transformation. But what happens is when you live in a society that emphasizes moralism, Let's just follow the rules. Don't be as bad as the other people. And you can look down your nose at somebody else. God is saying, you know what? Pick up your nose, look up to heaven, so when it rains, it falls into your nose, and you're looking up to heaven at God's standard, and that's your standard. And don't bring your head down and don't look around, because that's not your standard. Your standard is God. Now, watch this now. You probably are better than a whole bunch of people you live around. You probably are better than a bunch of people you grew up with. But God is saying that's the wrong question. Are you better than God? Are you meeting God's standard? Has your character and your conduct been transformed to 100% emulate that of Jesus Christ? So I put together this image this week. And what happens is, boy, it was an iceberg. And on this iceberg, typically we focus on the tip of the iceberg. But we focus on what's happening at the top of the iceberg, but we're not focused what's happening beneath the surface. The devotion, the dedication, the commitment. Guys, spiritual transformation is directly correlated with one's commitment to Jesus Christ. Are we tracking together? Spiritual dedication is the key to spiritual transformations. Well, let me give you 17, but I'm not going to take long like I normally do. Smile at me. Well, we can stay long because the Cowboys ain't playing, right? Will y'all give me the same time you get the Cowboys today? Can we go first half, and then we'll take a break, and then I can preach another sermon in the second half? And, you know, I promise I'll get you into the end zone. Amen? Watch this now. And so let me give you these 7 things. Guys, we must choose spiritual dependence over spiritual independence. We must choose spiritual dependence over spiritual independence. So watch this now. If you choose spiritual independence, even as a believer in Jesus Christ, you will not ascertain the maturity that God is aiming for in your spiritual life. So you just feel like, boy, they're the mechanics of the spiritual life, and then they're the dynamics of the spiritual life. Y'all still with me? I'm dropping like it's hot. Y'all just looking at me. Smile at me, all right? Watch this now. The mechanics of the spiritual life are praying, reading, obeying, serving, fasting, giving. All those things are dynamics of the spiritual growth and spiritual life. But what are the dynamics of spiritual growth? See, guys, the dynamics are, what is your relationship like? And anybody who's been in a relationship knows that relationships are dynamic. Any husbands here today? You can be the best husband in the world in the morning, and by the evening, you the scum of the earth. Might not be quite that drastic, but boy, you can wake up, she excited to see you, and hey, you wonderful, you great, and by the evening, hello. It's the dynamics of a relationship. How many of y'all got kids? All righty. You know, boy, you was glad they came when they was born. But you glad when they leave at 18, right? Something happened between birth and 18 that said, hasta la vista, baby. All right, I don't want to see you again, right? Because, boy, it's the dynamic of a relationship. And, boy, a relationship happens daily. And when it comes to doing Christianity and serving Christ, we're looking for the results of Christ often over the relationship with Christ. And God is into a relationship. You know, it takes time to cultivate a relationship, doesn't it? See, boy, you can't just, well, I spent time with you last month. Why don't you just apply what happened last month to the day and you'll feel better and I can go golf? That's not how it works, is it? Relationship happens daily. And the challenge of cultivating spiritual transformation is that, boy, relationship with Christ is dynamic. You can be up today and down tomorrow. It is a dynamic relationship. Are we tracking together? So, well, let me give you 7 things to choose when it comes to this area of spiritual dependence. Choosing spiritual dependence over enemy. Number 1, you got to choose transformation. How many of y'all want to be transformed? You know, but talking about college and basketball, I remember, you know, I was one of those kids who my dad was ready for me to leave, and I was ready to go too. My dad passed in 2008, and boy, we were a lot alike. And boy, when I was younger, my dad taught me not to be scared of people, but he didn't tell me to be scared of him. Smile at me. And so, boy, me and Daddy used to go nose to nose, toe to toe, head to head. And my dad was a witty person, had a fast mouth. I was a witty dude, had a fast mouth, all that kind of stuff. And boy, I remember to my dad one day, I can't wait to leave this house. And my daddy said, I can't wait for you to leave. That's how I was 17, right? I was 17 years old. Now, by the grace of God, that changed a number of years later. Before I was 25, my dad was glad to talk to me. I was glad to talk to him. We would just sit on the phone together and say nothing. But when I went to college at 17 years old, and I couldn't wait to leave, I left 2 weeks after I graduated from high school to go get ready for the NCAA Division I basketball season. And I went there, and boy, when it came to the bench, I hadn't lifted a bunch of weights. They say, Pastor, you still hadn't lifted a bunch of weight. And boy, I used to have a different body. So watch this now. And so, boy, I got to college, but I got there early, and so I was going to the weight room, but I need to gain some weight and get stronger. So I go to the weight room, and I go in there, and boy, I saw the other guy, I put a big 45 plate on that side, and boy, I put a 45 plate on the other side, and then I got down there, and I got on the bar, and I was going to lift it off, but the only problem was the weight was glued, or I just couldn't lift it. It was glued, I couldn't lift it. But boy, I just kept sticking with it. Every day I go in there a couple times, but I tried getting it off. Then I finally got it off one day, and it bounced on my chest. And then I was doing push-ups and stuff, and doing curls, and boy, doing the tricep stuff, trying to build my bench press. And boy, from May until we got to October, I'd increased my bench press by 70 pounds. Man, and boy, before it was all over, I could bench press almost 300 pounds. Could squat almost 500 pounds. It wasn't just incremental change. It was transformation. How many of you all are really interested in spiritual transformation? I know, but I don't want to be called radical. I don't want folks to think I'm a holy roller. Watch this now. People are going to talk about you anyway. They might as well say something that, boy, you're like Christ, and your character is tight, your commitment is tight, your faithfulness is tight, your service is tight, your generosity is tight. They're going to talk about you anyway, but what are they saying about you? Let's choose transformation over incremental change. Number 2, let's choose grace over law. When you read chapter 3, he makes reference, he contrasts the old covenant and the new covenant. And boy, this old covenant was the Old Testament. It was the law. Galatians says it was a tutor. It was to bring us to God. It was to point out our flaws. It was to show us we couldn't make it on our own. But here in chapter 3, what he is arguing about, we've got a new covenant. He says in verse 4, such is the confidence that we have through Christ toward God. Not that we are sufficient in ourselves to claim anything is coming from us, but our sufficiency is from God. Selflessness. Who made us competent to be ministers of a new covenant, not of the letter, that's the Old Testament, but of the Spirit. For the letter kills, that's the Old Testament, but the Spirit gives life. Now, if the ministry of death, carved in letters on stone, that's the 10 Commandments, came with such glory that the Israelites could not gaze at Moses' face because of its glory, which was being brought to an end, would not the ministry of the Spirit have even more glory? He's saying, guys, don't align yourself with an Old Testament system of law, but align yourself with the system of grace. God, for it is by grace that you are saved through faith, that not of yourselves. It's the gift of God. What is grace? God's riches at Christ's expense. What is grace? It's God giving you what you do not deserve. We don't deserve salvation. We don't deserve the Holy Spirit. We don't deserve our competence. We don't deserve our ability. We don't deserve what God has given us. As Larnell Harris says, were it not for grace, where would I be? Wandering around a road that leads to nowhere with my salvation up to me. But by the grace of God, so go I. Were it not for grace, choose grace over law. Well, boy, Pastor, why is grace important? Because grace keeps you humble. Grace reminds you that what do you have that you have not received? Grace reminds you, apart from God's covering, apart from God's protection, apart from God's mercy, you would have made some different decisions and been on the other end of that benevolence. He says here, we are not sufficient of ourselves. Verse 5, not that we are sufficient ourselves to claim anything is coming from us, but our sufficiency is from God. Grace reminds you that what you have, God did it. Who you are, God made you. Where you're going, God is going to take you. Choose grace over law. Watch it now. Number 3, watch this now. Choose gazing over glancing. Choose gazing over glancing. Boy, this is countercultural. Look at verse 18. And we all with unveiled face. Unveiled face means, the veil was the law. The veil was you haven't trusted in Christ yet. But when you trust Christ, the veil falls. Now you can see clearly. A veil, y'all, a veil's like a COVID mask that's covering your eyes. Not just your mouth, but now it's covering your eyes. And so now you can't see clearly, or you can't see properly. He says here, and now we all with unveiled face, watch this now, this word, beholding. Beholding. Underline on your iPad, circling on your phone, beholding the glory of the Lord. Guys, this word beholding, it means to fix your gaze. It means in the Greek, it means to contemplate, it means to cogitate, it means to meditate upon, it means to think it through, it means to give extended focus to. Let me ask you a question. Are you giving extended focus and attention to the glory of the Lord? Be honest, the answer is no. As a pastor, I got to work hard to carve out time from people calling, places to visit, business going on, leadership, preparation. I got to take time and work hard to set aside time to gaze at His glory. If I got to do it, and that's my job, how much harder is it for you? When you've got babies and you've got husbands and you've got wives and you've got civic organizations and you've got family members and you've got your job and you've got different districts and you've got challenges pulling on you, when do you find time to gaze at His glory? You know the challenge that we live in a microwave society. We live in a society that's in I'm one of my personality. I'm always going. I'm always blowing. I prefer being busy rather than just sitting around somewhere. Watch this now. I want to make sure, I rust out rather than wear out. That's kind of my philosophy, right? But guys, every once in a while you got to sit down and just gaze at His glory. How much time are you taking to gaze at His glory? Here's the challenge, guys. There is no shortcut to gazing. It takes time. It takes an adjustment in your temperament. But watch the correlation. He says, and we all with unveiled face, beholding, gazing, contemplating, meditating what? The glory of the Lord. He didn't say the best business book. He didn't say the latest and greatest speaker and phenom. He didn't say attending church. He said beholding, gazing, contemplating, concentrating on the glory of the Lord. Where do we find that at? We find that in God's word, and we find that in prayer. Watch this now. Here's the correlation. Are being transformed. It's a contemporaneous activity as you are beholding, as you are gazing, as you are concentrating, as you are meditating. At the same time, you are being transformed. Are we tracking together? So it's interesting, when you go into that gym, you drop down and you start doing them push-ups, and you start doing one leg up in the air and all that kind of stuff, and doing one arm. Okay, now doing one arm push-ups. Just pretend, right? I can't do that stuff no more, right? Watch this now. I'm gonna die. Watch this now. Watch this now. When you get up, you want to see transformation. When you get up, you want to see some muscles. When you get up, you want to see this gone. Ladies, when you get up, you want to see that tight. Right? Y'all walking around the neighborhood doing lunges and, boy, I'm going to get this thing right today and all that kind of stuff. It's going to be tight this summer. And, boy, when you get there, it look the same. It takes time. It takes time. Doing it consistently, doing it faithfully, doing it patiently, doing it correctly, and before you know it, then you experience the transformation. Are we tracking together? You got to choose gaze. Watch it now. You got to choose growing glory over fading glory. He makes reference here to Moses. How people would look at Moses. Look at verse 7. Now this ministry of death carved in letters of stone came with such glory that the Israelites could not gaze at Moses' face because of its glory. So watch this, guys. When Moses got into the presence of God, it transformed his countenance. It transformed him physically. The same dynamic happens. When you go before God and you spend time in God's presence, God may not change your situation, but God will change you. God will turn that anger into peace. God will transform that anxiety into confidence. God will transform that despair into hope. God will transform that problem into a solution. But you got to go before his presence. And so watch this now. If Moses could do that, and Moses was fading, so Moses covered his face with a COVID mask so people could not see his face was changing. He was going back to normal after being in God's presence. Verse 8, would not the ministry of the Spirit have even more glory? Watch this, guys. For if there was glory in the ministry of kindness, and that's the law, the ministry of righteousness must far exceed it in glory. Indeed, in this case, what once had glory had to have Indeed, in this case, what once glory has come to have no glory at all. You can read it for yourself, verse 10. Because the glory, I'm struggling, right? Because of the glory that surpasses it. The ministry of the Spirit is greater than the ministry of the law. And when you spend time gazing, meditating, contemplating, and spending time with God, God has a way of transforming you. It's no longer fading glory, but it is growing glory. Number 5, you got to choose the Spirit over self. We got too much self-help stuff these days. Let me ask you a question. Are you more tempted to go pay $39.99 to get the 7 keys to what you want to be versus just going and grabbing your Bible for free? Let me ask you a question. Is it easier for you to go listen to a 1-hour self-help talk than it is to pray for an hour? We're a self-help culture. We're a self-help society. I mean, I face the same temptation, right? But guys, watch this now. Will you choose the Spirit over, you know what? I'm going to walk by the Spirit so I will not carry out the desires of the flesh. Y'all got my picture ready yet? Y'all hear my? You guys, I had a picture. Y'all know, I had a beautiful picture worked on this weekend, and they didn't show my beautiful picture at the right time. I'm giving them a second chance to show my beautiful picture. Y'all online. I want y'all to see my beautiful picture. Me and my daughter put this picture together this weekend to illustrate to you all God's truth. Y'all got my beautiful. Guys, give them a hand, guys. They got my beautiful picture up there already. So watch this, guys. On my beautiful picture, watch this, guys. At the core is spiritual dependence. This is the iceberg. We often want what's on the top of the iceberg, but we don't want to do what's at the foundation of the iceberg. See, guys, at the foundation is spiritual dependence. And when you have spiritual dependence, you get a chance to experience Galatians chapter 5, verse 22 and 23. You get a chance to experience spiritual fruit. Love, joy, peace, meekness, gentleness, self-control. Against such there is no law, and goodness. But then, guys, when we are not spiritual dependent, then we're going down, and the bottom says spiritual failure. Spiritual life is dynamic. When you stop being dependent, you go down. When you are more dependent, you go up and you experience spiritual fruit. What does your iceberg look like? Are we tracking together? See, guys, this is countercultural. This is not what society is teaching. They say focus on the fruit. Focus on what you want. God is saying focus on dependence. You need to make sure you choose spirit over. Is it what you can do or what the Spirit can do? Watch this now. Choose an internal focus over an external focus. Choose an internal focus over an external. Choose developing what's on the inside and not what's merely on the outside. Watch this now. What do you tell somebody who's cratered their life with sin? You know what we tell them? Deuces. Shout at you. Holler at you. Don't want to be you. Hope it works out. Praying for you. Is that what the Bible teaches about spiritual transformation? What does the Bible teach about why do we crater our lives? I'm helping somebody. We crater our lives. That was my picture. It was temporary. All right. I need my picture back. All right. Watch that. Okay. They're gonna bring it back. I'm confident. I'm walking by faith. They're gonna bring it back. All right. So guys. There we go. Praise the Lord. That's what you call faith. You got to believe God. All right. So boy, when we crater our lives when we stop being spiritually dependent. Hello? When people are strung out on drugs, alcohol, embezzlement, promiscuity, cheating, we very often, you know what? Well, you just choosing to wreck your life. People who wakes up and say, you know what? I'm going to wreck my life today. It's going to be a horrible day. I'm going to wake up today. I'm going to destroy my family. I'm going to destroy my profession. I'm going to destroy my reputation. That's not what people do. Sin is illogical. That's why James chapter 1 says, be not deceived. In other words, being deceived means you're not paying attention to what the probable consequences of your actions are. And that happens when you're not being spiritually dependent. Spiritual dependent. Galatians 5:16 and 17 says, watch this now, walk by the Spirit and you will not carry out the desires of the flesh. Raise your hand if you got flesh. All right, now, I ain't asked you how much. I just said flesh, all right? Most of us got more flesh than we want, right? Watch this now. Everybody here has flesh. So everybody here has to battle with the pull of the flesh. God says, instead of following your flesh, follow the Spirit of God. Rick Warren says, but we lie to ourselves all the time. You cannot depend upon your own thoughts. Who do you have in your life that helps you stay spiritually dependent? I'm keeping you too long. Choose an internal focus over. Lastly, choose an ongoing experience over a one-time event. Number 1, choose transformation. Number 2, choose grace over law. Number 3, choose gazing over glancing. Number 4, you want to make sure that you are choosing growing glory over fading glory. Number 5, choose spirit over self. Number 6, choose an internal focus over an external focus. Number 7, choose an ongoing experience over a one-time event. Wouldn't it be nice if serving Christ and experiencing sanctification, experiencing transformation was a one and done? And the mistake we often make is that when a person's current performance and that current behavior is not good, then they never had the event of salvation. People can have the event of salvation, but not have the ongoing experience of sanctification. And so what we got to get you back on track. So when you drop the ball, when you credit your life, you know what? We got a model now. Let's get you back dependent upon God. Because when you are dependent upon God, it transforms your life, it transforms your character, it transforms your perspective, it'll ultimately transform your conduct. You know, for whatever reason this week, what came to my mind was Alex Smith as I closed the sermon. Alex Smith was drafted, I think, the #1 pick in the 2005 NFL draft. I think he came from Utah, and I think that the coach at Carolina now, used to be at Ohio State, I think that was his coach at that point in time. I think they had an undefeated season or something like that. I mean, a very good season at Utah. He came into the NFL. I think he's gone to the, what they call it when you become an all-star, 3 times a year or something like that. But Pro Bowl, he was a Pro Bowler, and then ultimately he ended up getting hurt. And what ended up hurting him is going to end up being what he's known for. See, he was a good football player. Things didn't go well for him at Washington, but last year he came back after this horrendous compound fracture in his leg. At one point in time, I was watching a documentary. They had thought about amputating his leg from the knee down because things were just so bad and so ugly and so gruesome. I forget how many surgeries he had. But boy, he wanted to be able to run with his kids and hang out with his wife. So boy, he endured the surgeries and the struggles and all that kind of stuff. And then by the time he came back to Washington, there was a new regime. There was a new coach. There were new assistants. And they really didn't know what to do with him because he was still making $30-something million a year, I believe, on contract. They didn't want the liability, but if they played him and he got hurt, then what? We're on the line for all of this, plus liability, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's how business people think. But watch this now. He ended up being cleared by his doctors. He ended up being cleared by the other doctors to say, you can go play. And then that quarterback ended up being hurt who was starting ahead of him. And then what ended up happening was they had to put Alex back into the game, and Alex ended up leading the team to the playoffs for the first time in years. He ended up retiring because nobody wanted to have that ongoing risk and liability. But he was good with retiring. In 2020, he was the NFL Comeback Player of the Year. If we talk about this spiritual transformation, there's some people online today. This can be your year to make your spiritual comeback. If you're here right now, this can be your time to make your spiritual comeback. Let's be honest about it. Many of us are not experiencing spiritual transformation. We go through the motions and we're Christian, but we're not experiencing increasing your bench press by 70 pounds in 2.5 months, 3 months. We're not really into exponential growth when it comes to our spiritual lives. We want our portfolio to perform with exponential results, but not per se our spiritual life. I want to encourage you and ask you, will you choose spiritual transformation today? There's some of you all say, Pastor, I can't do spiritual formation. Some of you all just need to get in the game. Become part of the team. Christ wants you on his team. He wants you to trust in his death, his burial, and his resurrection. And some of y'all say, well, Pastor, I just can't get it together. I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready to stop this. Christ did not tell you to get it together. He told you to come unto me, all ye who are weary and heavy laden, and take my yoke upon you. Only Christ can transform you. So I want to encourage you, boy, to trust Christ as your Savior.